Welcome to All Things Financial with Jack Driscoll. Each week, Jack takes on all things you thought were hard to understand about your finances and makes it fun, easy, but most of all interesting. From insurance to the best way to save your money and squeeze the most out of the dollars you put aside for your rainy day. And now you have a friend in the money business. Here's your host, Jack Driscoll.
Welcome back again, everyone, to another edition of All Things Financial. I wanted to go through so many different things over the show, and that's why I call it All Things Financial. We deal with insurance and taxes and savings and, long-term care, healthcare risks, everything to do with money. We'll be doing some shows on identity theft. That's a huge area that is pretty much misunderstood. We're really lambs to the slaughter on all the hacking and phishing and emails and identity theft and identity fraud. And that's one of the big areas I'll be covering in some future shows here, because that's also a financial risk and belongs on a show called All Things Financial. Today, though, I wanted to talk about something that I don't think I've ever talked about on the show. I could be wrong, but it deals with people that are working, considering toward when to retire. Will we be able to afford to retire? How much will we need to retire? But the real question, when to retire. I don't think I've ever talked about this on the show of, do you retire at 62? Do you retire at 58, 59, 65, 66? Or is it just personal choice and personal abilities? So I thought I'd take some time on this week's show, because I talk about this all the time in my practice, but I don't think I've ever talked about it on the show. Let me share this. I think most people looking at early retirement are making a mistake. And the reason is the amount of resources that we look at. I get asked the question, can I afford to retire at 58, 59, 62, or take early Social Security? Most people who are asking any of their advisors, can we afford to retire? And if the advisors are doing work based on how much income do you need right now, and here we can create that amount of income with the reduced Social Security, I think you're making a mistake when they stop there. Because what happens if someone needs $3,000 or $4,000 a month, let's say? Somebody else needs $8,000 a month. Somebody else needs $2,000 a month. The numbers don't matter. Whatever a person needs a month now to live on before retirement is probably similar, so the planning for it's not real hard, on how much you'll need after retirement. But what is hard is that people are stopping with a snapshot calculation. Here, you currently make whatever it is you make monthly, and we can generate, they'll say, in addition with your Social Security, that same amount monthly, so why keep working? And I'll look at that and say, wait a minute. If we take that snapshot view, that only answers the question, can you afford to retire right now? But if that decision that you make relies on drawing interest or income or withdrawals from your assets, then you have to look and see, are we running a risk, number one, that some of those withdrawals from our assets, the assets may not be earning enough interest or growth or gains or dividends in every month to make those distributions. So my number one concern is, what is this dependent on? What's this formula relying on? Is it relying on unpredictable market gains? Is it relying on unpredictable withdrawal rates, unsustainable withdrawal rates? That if anything goes wrong, we're starting to tap into our principal or draw from our principal in the bad months. There's the first recipe for disaster. Because remember, the amount of assets you take into retirement is all you'll ever have. It has to last you for the rest of your life. So one of the flaws in that type of retirement planning, that short-sighted type of retirement planning, is it's a snapshot view in many cases of can you afford to retire right now. It many times does not take into consideration how long people are living now. It does not take into consider in many cases inflation will double your needs over 10 to 15 years. Will your income double in 10 to 15 years? Or will you be one of those people in retirement, like so many others, who say and complain, we can't afford our property taxes to go up. We're on limited income. We're on fixed income. We can't afford for these health care costs. We can't do with these medicines. Our insurance premiums, number one, are too high. You don't want to put yourself in this situation because of thinking you're creating the luxury lifestyle, being able to retire early. If that means then 10 or 15 years later, you're struggling and have nowhere to turn. It might have been, in many cases, more prudent to continue working the bonus years from 62 to 66 when normal Social Security rates apply, and I'll get into that in a minute. You've had an additional 4 to 5 years to contribute to your 401k, maximize. And that brings up another point, and I have talked about this on other shows. Trial running retirement. So when you're 62 and think you can afford to retire and say, here's how much we'll need, this is the only amount I think we'll need to live on, and you're making more than that right now, take only the amount into your checking account every month from your pays that you think you need to live on. Put the rest in the savings account and don't touch it. Pretend like it's not there. Pretend like you just retired and test out, can you truly afford to live on that X dollars a month that you chose? Run that scenario for 6 months or so. It'll be a big shock. You'll find yourself, we didn't realize we were spending money on this, or we didn't realize eating out cost so much, or we didn't realize we spent so much on the grandkids or the Christmas. We didn't realize in our budget things came up. If the roof goes or if the furnace goes, we didn't factor that in. So you could trial run that for a year. You don't have to wait till you're 62. You could do it at 58 if you want. But the bottom line is, number one, whatever you think you need to live on, if it's less than what you're making now, immediately switch over to that amount. Put the rest in savings. Don't touch it. Pretend like it didn't come in. Live on only that amount for 6 months or a year. And I think you'll be surprised and pleased you didn't retire yet without doing more in-depth planning or trusting on one advisor to guide your whole future. Number two, people in retirement are living way longer than planned for. You know, people say, I want to live longer. I hear some people say, I don't want to live longer. You know, we don't want to live till 100. We don't want to live till 90, and others say we do. We don't have a whole lot of choice over that. I mean, if we go to doctors, if we're sick and we go to doctors, if something happens to us and we go to doctors, then you are working to try to prolong your life and maintain your health. And if that's the case, our medical system has shown it's a high likelihood they'll keep you living longer than you thought. Based on all your relatives, all your friends, all your neighbors, you could see what I just said is true. And what we're running into, and I heard on one of the meetings that I had attended probably 15 years ago or so, maybe 20, people are beginning to live as long in retirement as almost as long as all their working years. And what their point was, they're saying people graduate from college, let's say at age 25 or 24, and they're working till they're 65. That's 40 years of working years, their whole career. And then if they choose to retire at 62, there's a very real likelihood they're still living 30 years later. One of the two, if you're a married couple, still living at 92 years old. That's 30 years that whatever money you had when you retired better not only still be there, but it better be about double what it was worth when you retired at least, for you to be able to sustain that longevity, be able to handle all those increased costs, to be able to handle all those future uncertainties. And the healthcare issues in retirement are major issues. The long-term care, nursing homes, wiping out all of your assets, taking all the prescription medicines. You know, if you have grandparents, you'll know they sometimes are in a situation where they're lining up all their pills. They have reminders and pill keepers, and Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Monday evening, 3 or 4 pills each time. All the medicines, they're expensive. They're not all covered by insurance, folks. So your health care costs in retirement increase exponentially. So there are a number of risks in retirement. Back to our decision, do we retire early? So I have some people who won't listen. I have some people who will listen. And what we're looking at is, if you're 58, some pensions will let you retire. And my first caution is, if you have any qualified assets, IRAs, 401ks, for example, even non-qualified annuities, non-retirement annuities, all have penalties in them if you draw money out of those resources prior to age 59 and a half. There's an IRS regulation that says they're considered retirement vehicles. And in retirement vehicles, if you tap into those assets prior to age 59 and a half, it's the IRS who assesses an excise tax penalty of 10% of whatever you pull out, in addition to any other taxes that you owe. Any other taxes you'd otherwise owe, you also pay the IRS, when you're all finished paying your taxes, an additional 10% on the whole amount of money that you pulled out. Not the whole amount of money in the account, just what you pulled out prior to age 59 and a half. So my first initial point of planning would be, is this retirement plan based on the risk of, or the certainty of, pulling any money out of retirement accounts, including non-qualified annuities, remember. Non-qualified means non-IRA annuities, non-retirement account annuities, but annuities, typically, variable annuities or fixed annuities, typically seen by the IRS as retirement-oriented vehicles, even if they're not in a retirement plan, and are assessed that premature withdrawal or excise penalty. Now, in a non-qualified annuity, the excise penalty is only assessed on the taxable portion of the withdrawal. In a non-qualified annuity, that 10% excise penalty is on all the IRA accounts or 401ks. So there's my first point. You get the advice on, can you retire early? Can you afford to retire early? Factor that in. Number 2, you get to 59 and a half and say, okay, now I can afford to retire early. Well, now I caution you and all my clients on, wait a minute, who's paying your health care insurance? Once you retire, is your employer still helping you with your health care coverage? Do you have it now free, completely paid for by the employer? Do you have it now at a lower cost, although contributory, where you pay a portion or all of the health insurance premiums, but maybe they're negotiated lower under the company plan? Once you retire, what happens with your health care expenses? Where do you get health care coverage? Where does your spouse get health care coverage? So if you're on the plan with your employer that covers you and your spouse, what happens? Do you, who are age 59 and a half in this example, go out and buy your own individual health care coverage? If you do, you better go out and find out those prices, because they could be as high, I've heard, as $800 a month for an individual. So here you are retiring, factoring all of your income needs, and you find out, wait a minute, it's going to cost $800 a month, and because we lost group coverage, and my spouse either doesn't work or doesn't have group coverage available at their work, now we're paying $800 a month individually for each, or $600 a month for each. Why didn't someone tell us about this? So these are some risks in severe early retirement that I talk about. Sometimes the spouse that is still working, the other spouse, unless you both retire at the same time, might have and be able to turn on health coverage or get access to health coverage with their employer, and maybe even cover you too. So you want to look into that. There's your 58, 59 and a half scenarios, but we haven't gotten to Social Security yet. So if you retire prior to age 62, let's say at age 60, you don't have an opportunity in most cases, unless you're disabled or something like that, you don't have an opportunity to tap into Social Security at all. So you're on your own until you're 62. 62 is early retirement for Social Security, and it is normally 66 or 66 in some odd months that Social Security calculates as the normal retirement age for most of us. It used to be 65 for all of us, but President Reagan changed that way back in the 90s, and now ordinary retirement for most people in this age bracket that are looking at retirement now is around 66 to 66 and a half years. That's your full retirement income from Social Security. So if you retire early, every month earlier than that, that benefit is reduced 1%. And if you retire at 62 instead of your normal, we're normally seeing a 25% reduced income. Now, one important question has been asked of me, is that just reduced until I hit 66 or 66 and 4 months or whatever my normal retirement date is? No, it's reduced forever. So it's a big consideration if you take it 62. Now, other people will say, and other advisors will say, yes, but if you don't take it 62 and wait till 66 or 66 and 4 months or whatever it is, look at those 4 years worth of income you could have received that up until age 66, if you defer, you have zero. And what happens if you die at age 70? You've only collected for 4 years. And you could have gotten all that extra money out of Social Security. No one benefits if you die and your Social Security check dies with you. It's not like a 401k or a pension sometimes with a survivor benefit that heirs will receive the difference, with one exception. The spouse, if still living, receives either the spouse's Social Security once they're eligible to take Social Security, or at least half of the deceased spouse's Social Security while you're living, the living spouse's Social Security, and the deceased spouse, then the surviving spouse gets 100%. So let me go over that more clearly. Number one, husband gets his full Social Security or his reduced Social Security. Spouse number two, the wife, gets her full Social Security or her reduced Social Security, both based on each's earnings. Now, if one of the spouse's Social Security benefits that they're receiving or eligible to receive is less than the other spouse's, here's what we look at. Each spouse is entitled to either their own Social Security benefit or half of the other's Social Security amount, whichever is larger, while both are living. That's pretty cool, folks. So if I have a husband and I have a wife, and the husband or the wife earned more than 2 times what the other spouse did, and their Social Security is more than 2 times what the other spouse's is, we totally disregard the lower paying Social Security amount on the lower income earnings on that spouse, we immediately say we file for spouse number one, and spouse number two gets half of what's being received by spouse number one, even if spouse number two never even worked. So that's while you're both living. So we have spouse number one, full Social Security or reduced, spouse number two, at least half of that, even if they never worked, or their own Social Security, whichever is larger. So that's while both are living. Once one of the spouses is deceased, whichever one it is, the other spouse begins to receive the highest Social Security check that either were receiving. That's in a nutshell. I won't go into more details than that. But when we do Social Security planning and we do early retirement planning, age 62 versus age 66, be very careful here. Because you may say, like so many pundits say, take it early, you get the extra 4 years. And someone else may realize in doing the numbers, wait a minute, you're jipping the survivor benefit for the next 25 years for the first spouse to die. So be very careful with these decisions. I say, though, the number one biggest reason most people are making a mistake to consider retiring at 62, as opposed to waiting until normal at age 66, is you're not building up enough buffers. You're not building up enough safety net assets. You're not building up enough reserves, and you're going to live too long to try to actually guess or predict at age 62 how much you'll need for the next 30 years of uncertainties, of wars, of civil commotions, of terrorism, of financial collapses, of inflation, of tax risks, of health risks, of all the uncertainties. 30 years is just too long to not build extra reserves, extra layers. Now, many people, and I'll wrap the show up with this, say, here's the problem though. At age 66, by then we want to enjoy retirement while we still can, while we're still healthy to. What good does it do us if we wait too long and then can't enjoy it? I hear you loud and clear. But I will tell you, today's 66 was the old 56. You could see it in anybody that you talk to. You could see we're all younger at the ages we're chronologically slated than the people that were 2 generations before us at these same ages. We're just a lot younger and we're a lot healthier. We will be able to afford, or we will be able to enjoy healthy retirements for a long time. You could see that by looking at most 70-year-olds. So do yourself a service. Give me a call if you want. We can help you review these scenarios on when is the best and optimal time. But I'm going to tell you, build up these extra reserves, use those last 4 years, and jet propel yourself into a lot more financial reserves, building a much bigger and safer cushion to withstand uncertainties, unpredictable uncertainties in your hopefully long retirement future for both yourself and your spouse. All right, folks, we're out of time. I appreciate your tuning in. I wanted to cover that this week because I miss it so many weeks, but I talk about it with my clients all the time. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll be back again next week.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Inc., member FINRA SIPC, and registered investment advisor. Insurance services offered through Driscoll Insurance and Financial Services Inc., which is not affiliated with SagePoint Financial Inc.